All right, so hey, let's just actually look at the workshop service manual, okay, for the carburetor settings. So you can pause this and go back and read it. This is pretty consistent with how I learned and how I adjust things. All right, but as I said before, and you'll see it on the next page here, when you read through this. Basically, you are going to turn, once you have everything warmed up, you're gonna want a turn out, meaning anti-clockwise or counterclockwise from the fully seated position by about one turn for each of the jets. And then when everything has been warmed up for a number of minutes, you're going to go through this process that's shown on the right side. Okay. So you're going to move that low speed nozzle left and right, meaning counterclockwise and clockwise, until you find the highest idle speed. Once you've done that, you're going to back off, in other words, counterclockwise by another quarter turn. That's just kind of a safety measure so you don't burn up the saw. Then you're going to go to your high speed or your high jet, and you're trying to set that appropriately so that when you throttle it up fully, it 4-strokes. It's basically going to gurgle on you, right? And as soon as you get that sound, you've got it adjusted correctly. And at idle, you should be able to throttle up really quickly. If you can't, then it might be set too rich on the low jet. Just something to be aware of. If you also are too rich on the low jet, you may have some problems with the saw starting, as you would if you have it set far too lean. So at any rate, your idle screw, you'll then go and set that after you set your high and your low jet. Okay. And so here's some information on, what you should be looking for, those last 3 bullets on a correctly adjusted carburetor. Okay. So I'm not sure that when I do the test that I'm going to be able to sufficiently explain that process as I go through it, but that's what I'm doing when I'm going to be, trying to tune this. I will be using a tachometer. Oh, another thing I should mention is that sometimes you have discrepancies even with the manufacturer's recommended information. So this is the workshop service manual for all these Jonsereds, including the 625. And you can see that actually the true overspeed max RPMs is 12,500. And that's what I'm familiar with these kinds of saws. Even a lot of modern saws. So it's not 12,000. The 12,000 that was listed in the owner's manual is over on the left side, and that's during run-in. I've got a cylinder that's already familiar with its piston and piston ring. It's not overly worn, but it's already been broken in. So I'm actually going to be setting the overspeed max to 12,500. And the idle speed, I'm going to plan on setting that around 2,700 to 2,800. 2,700 is a kind of an odd number, and for this generation of saws, I'm very familiar with 2,800, so that's probably what I'm going to use. Anyway, it's all in how the saw performs by sound and with throttle up. And if you've got it set too lean or too rich, you're going to have issues with starting, with dying. You're going to have issues with throttle up. And on your overspeed maxes, if you're running too lean, it's going to scream on you and never 4-stroke, and you don't want that. All right, so that's kind of this general process. And I'm going to go ahead and set the carb to factory settings right now. And then our next video will be our first test run after rebuilding this 30 to 35-year-old saw. Bowman out. All right, let's see if we can get this fired up. It's probably going to be really smoky initially because we got a lot of oil in the cylinder assembly. There's probably old gas in the carb, so it might also be hard running initially. It could take a while to initially get it started. If not, then we know we got a really good saw and rebuild here, but we'll see. So just keep in mind the process I talked about earlier, and I will maybe post notes on this video as I go through the process. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Let's see what we got. Lots of compression. I'm just prepping the saw here, doing that. All right. Sounds real good. Let it idle for a minute or so before we tune it. Idle.
Uh-huh.
All right, successful start. Just beautiful saw. Didn't have too much difficulty tuning. I revisited a couple things, but we got it set for idle at just right around 2,700 for idle. And we've got about 12,004 to 12,005 for overspeed. Oiler's working great. It's throttling up great. I don't think we have to worry about rebuilding the old carb on this. Very nice, successful rebuild on this. You see it's oiling almost a little too much. That's because I have it cranked all the way up because I plan on running a longer bar. So with that longer bar, you'll need that. And also if you were testing the carburetor and the engine with a longer bar, you would be looking for lower RPMs. So I wanted to go with factory spec. So that's why I tuned this using the 18-inch bar. But if I put on another bar and then run a tack on it, it's going to be running slightly lower RPMs because it's pulling a long bar, a long chain, so forth. But man, very nice saw for some general felling and timber work. And I'm going to be using it for cutting stumps. That's why I have the standard handle. Nice saw.